Now we're live. Well, it took a couple tries, but here we are.
Hey, you
Hi,
adapted.
everyone. I know, right? Lucky for us. So hi, welcome to another Coaching Conversations. I'm here with my friend Rachel Gaddis. And Rachel, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'd love to. So, I am a career coach based in Northern Virginia, and I specialize in helping unhappy mid-career professionals who, for whatever reason, they found themselves at a place in their careers where they don't like what they're doing anymore and they want to do something different, but can't quite figure out what that is that they want to do. And I help them figure out what that is and then take a few steps in the direction of making that happen.
That's important. That's really, really important work. And I'm
I
glad you're doing
love
it.
what I'm doing. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, we are blessed to be in this profession, I think. And the profession's better because you're in it. So that's
Oh, thank
fantastic.
you, Todd. I feel the same
I
way about you.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait. I can't wait for this conversation. We're here today to talk about change and transformation, and and all the interesting nuances that are in there. Um, Rachel, I thank you for suggesting this topic because I think a lot of people think about it, and I'm really curious to know what was on your mind when you suggested it.
Oh, well, I love talking about change, first of all. It's core to the type of coaching that I do, obviously. My clients
Mhm.
are always going through some kind of change or about to. So
Mhm.
it's always very near and dear to my heart. And one of the things I think about with change is how it's, to me, it's a little different from transformation. It's sort of like change is something that happens to you
Mm.
or is kind of thrust upon you in some way. And then to
Mhm.
me, transformation can come from change, but it sort of comes from within in my mind.
Mm. Mm.
Um, I don't know if everyone would think of it that way, but that's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah, well, and as we're talking, the folks who joined us, I want to make sure that they know that they can pipe in the comments too, and we'll take a look because this isn't just a two-way conversation. This is an everybody conversation. Um, and what I love about what you're saying, Rachel, is that there's an element of choice that goes into the transformation, like an element of
Mm,
agency, um, and it's almost like it can be, um, a good from a bad. Not that change is necessarily bad, but it's often perceived that way at the very beginning. And certainly, in my past as an organizational change agent, that's often how the people who needed to change something in their job felt as a result of of being on the receiving end of whatever that change
yeah,
is, right?
like it's being inflicted on you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I was thinking while you were saying that, I was thinking about a place I worked that shall go unnamed, but I'm sure anyone in my network who's listening will know exactly what place I'm talking about. But it was going through a lot of you know, tumult at the time and went through a period where a new org chart was coming out for the division I worked in
Mm-hmm.
like clockwork every 6 weeks or so. It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got to a point where, uh, we kind of moved past the point where we resisted that type of change and we just expected it. It would be like, oh, is this the new org chart? All right, well, the work got done every day regardless, every week, every
Wow.
month. It didn't matter. It didn't affect us anymore.
Mm.
Somebody new would come in, they would make up their org chart, they would send it out. We would kind of look at it and dismiss it because it didn't change anything about what we were doing, not really.
Mm.
Because we knew there was a new one coming like next month. Um,
Mm.
so that was an interesting, I would say, transformative experience for me because it
Mm-hmm.
made me sort of uh, move beyond um, my place, relative to an
Mm-hmm.
org chart and sort of think about, okay, what do I want to accomplish today? How do I want to help the people around me?
Wow. Like what's coming up for me, and you say that, is that there's a relationship between transformation and adaptation.
Ooh, yes, I like that.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
wonder, because I'd never actually thought of it quite that way. I mean, and you know, in coaching, we think
Ah,
of evoking transformation, right? And it seems like
mhm.
this big thing that needs to happen, right? A
Right.
client comes to us, it's like, well, I want to transform, you know, my career, my life, my this, my that, whatever it happens to be. But the thing is like these things can happen in very small little increments. And what
For
I
sure.
love about the little transformations is that suddenly that means that there's more data, right?
Mhm.
Like when
Yeah.
something changes just a little bit, when something transforms just a little bit, then there's more data, there's something
Mhm.
more to hang on to, and then there's something more to be curious about. And it can have sort of a ripple effect or an exponential impact. Again,
Yeah.
maybe I'm being abstract again. I'm not
No,
sure.
big time. I would love to hear from people who are on the chat about this too. I mean, does any of this resonate with you? Do you feel like change and transformation are the same for you, or do they show up differently? And what do you think about this point about adaptation? I feel like I hadn't thought about that before, but now that Todd mentions it, yeah, they feel distinct to me. I love
Hmm.
that point. Like I'll be thinking about that for a long time now. What
Hmm.
about for you? What examples do you have about change and transformation and even adaptation now that we're talking about it?
Well, and it's interesting because you know, before we started, I shared an experience, and you know, it didn't strike me as a transformative experience until I started applying this adaptation lens to it. So I'll share it again. You know, I remember a long time ago, I was in a role as a senior program manager, and again, at a company I'm not going to name. It was a contract position, and I had just been assigned this giant data migration project that you know was likely to take 2 years, and it also was likely to be extraordinarily boring. Like data migration projects are really not my cup of tea. Um, and and all I could do as I was assigned it was like, this is a really, really good gig. Like this is 2 years of guaranteed contract work, and also 2 years of my life that I'm just never going to get back. And right, because it was also going to be an awful lot of work, and it took
Yeah,
me a couple weeks. But one of the things that I realized was actually no, like what are the choices that I have in this moment, and I ultimately chose to end the contract because well, I mean, a couple reasons. Like, you know, early on it would have been easy for them to replace it because, to be honest, it was like this was a pretty sweet gig and anyone else would have wanted it.
yeah,
um, and I decided, no, you know what, it's time for me to find something that's going to be a better fit
yeah,
for my life and for what I want to do, because I didn't want to feel like I wasted 2 years. And that was a transformative event, in that it led me to the belief that I had choices that I didn't feel like I had when I was first given the assignment. Like it didn't
yeah,
feel like I could walk away. And 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 from an adaptation perspective, it informed how I approached my jobs, whether they were contract or full time after that, because it was like, oh, you know what, actually I can always just, you know, like I mean, I can't always walk away, like, you know, as long as there's money in the bank, as
mhm,
long as there's, you know, we can pay the bills, obviously. But it also made it clear to me that the ability or maintaining a life where I have the ability to walk away was important to me, and
yeah,
and understanding an importance. It's almost like setting a boundary. And I think, why is this important? I think that this is important because a lot of us find ourselves in those little situations from time to time where we do
yeah,
something that maybe we didn't think we were capable of. And in those moments, like Rachel, if you'd asked me however long ago that was, it was over 15 years for sure. If you'd asked me 15 years ago, you know, Todd, did you undergo a transformation as a result of this experience? I would have said, no, of course not. I just did some stuff. Um,
right,
but if you're able to kind of look at it objectively from, I don't know, the rearview mirror or something, and say, okay, well, what was the impact on me of this experience, of this bold thing that I did, or of this thing that I did that I didn't think I was going to do? Often what's underneath there is something has transformed.
yeah, And you know that because on the other side of it, things are different. Life is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an opportunity to see, all right, now that I can do this, now that this has transformed, what's possible now that this is
Mm-hmm.
part of my reality. And when you notice those things, it's like noticing emotions, right? It's like noticing what's going on when, when I feel something,
Yeah.
instead of being consumed by it. And I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but this is, I think there's an analogy in this space
Yeah.
where, I read something the other day where someone said, don't think of yourself as being sad. Think of yourself as experiencing sadness. Think of yourself as
Yeah.
experiencing anger, right? And when you're able to do that, it's not easy. When you're able to do that, then you can go, okay, well, what's the message? Like, what are the things that I'm learning as a result of this? I think transformation is the same,
Mm-hmm.
because then even the little ones lead to something incremental.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox. What's coming up for you?
No, I like that. I like that a lot. And I do feel like often, um, the pep talk I give to myself, and I've had this conversation with a number of clients too in different
Mm-hmm.
ways, is that maybe it's difficult, going through the experience, going through the transformation, but on the other side of it is something wonderful. You just have
Mm-hmm.
to get through that hard part,
Mm-hmm.
and then you are able to look back and say, oh, I did that. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was over there and now I'm over
Mm-hmm.
here and it's so much better over here. But
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that, you have to go through that slog, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you will. And one of the ways that I encourage myself is by saying, okay, what am I going to want to be able to say to myself in a month? Or
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to be a good friend to my future self? Or
Mm-hmm.
um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the ways that I sort of ask my clients to dissociate themselves a little bit and say,
Yeah,
how will I do
absolutely.
this?
Yeah. We've got a comment from Tanya. Hi, Tanya. It's nice to see you here. And she said, here, I'll bring it up. Isn't it amazing how interconnected learning, transformation, and adaptation are? And I think it is amazing because, to be
It
honest, I
is.
hadn't thought of that. And really, I mean, we haven't even touched on the topic of learning within this place, apart from the learning that happens internally, as a result. And so I think that's a really, really interesting comment.
It's
What's
true.
Yeah,
Doesn't learning transform you? I mean, essentially.
well, I mean, learning coaching transformed me. Like, that is, like, I think it's probably one of the biggest transformations of my life, has been, the opportunity to learn how to be with, people through that growth and that transformation, and simply, witnessing the transformation of others has been a wildly transformative experience for me as well. And I
Yeah.
think actually it's one of the things that I love about the learning associated with coaching is
Yes.
is we're not teachers at all, right?
Hmm.
Because of the nature of the coaching relationship, I get to learn from my clients, and I learn a lot of stuff from my
Same.
clients. It's fantastic. Um, and as a result, my transformation continues as well. So it's just, yeah, I'm stuck at that one, because I just, now I'm suddenly in like I'm blissed out on transformation. What about the tough stuff though? Like, what
Oh,
about
yeah.
what about the tough stuff? Because, we the one of the things that we discussed when we were starting this up was, you know and you touched on it too. Change is something that often is thrust upon us, and then transformation is sort of the result that happens. And
Hmm.
where my mind immediately went with that is like, oh, would change bad, transformation good? And I know that that's an oversimplification, because that's not
Hmm.
true at all,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
um, But certainly in organizational change management, we used to talk a lot about, populations of people who had to change, who were quote unquote resistant to change.
Right.
And I wonder if resistance to transformation is a thing and how that might show up.
Yeah, you don't really hear that phrase, do you? Resistant to transformation,
Mm-hmm.
as much as you do about change. It feels like, um, I mean, I don't know. In my mind, I think because change comes from the outside
Mm-hmm.
and transformation comes from within, kind of following that thought process, it's like you don't really have a choice about the change that kind of comes down on
Mm-hmm.
you or gets kind of pushed on you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of at the heart of what makes it so difficult. Here you are minding your own business, happily having, a great day. And then all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, whammo, no
Mm-hmm.
more sitting at this desk. You have to go sit at that desk. And it's not in a part of the office you like, or the feng shui is bad over there, or you're going to have to sit next to, Todd and he's really loud on the phone all day, or,
I
whatever
really
the thing
am.
is. And, yeah. And then all of a sudden you're looking at next week being, not the kind of week you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the main things that makes change so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
We're
transformation, you're sort of like, you're driving that.
Yeah, I guess what's really interesting, because I love what you're saying and it makes an awful lot of sense. And certainly it's consistent with my experience. Because, all of those times that I've had to endure change rather than, be the agent of change within the context of a company, org changes are a really good example of that. There's always been a moment of not hesitation or anger or being off put, because it's like, well, what's wrong with what I'm doing? Like, what I'm doing is just fine. It's worked forever. It's worked for this long. Why should I change it? We've heard all that stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I think what's interesting is when change and transformation get conflated, which they often do. What we end up with is, or what I've noticed anyway in my practice as a coach, is that folks want transformation but don't recognize that there's change that precedes it. Right. And so even if the change is something that I need to do internally, it's something that I need to apply, and I need to apply it consistently in order for the transformation to take effect. Right. And there's all sorts of sort of simple examples I think that we can apply. Like if I want to be able to, run 5 kilometers, well, I need to be able to run 1 kilometer first, and I need to be able to run
Yeah.
1 kilometer consistently. And when I can do that, then I should go up to 1.5, and then 2, and then 2.5, and 3. Right. And those small changes result in a transformation over time, like the one that you're describing. And that's sort of, let's look back. And if I look back, oh my goodness, 2 months ago I couldn't run 5 kilometers, but now I can.
Yeah.
Did I go on a rant? Was that off topic?
No, not at all. I was just thinking about that in the context of the hard stuff, right? Which is kind of where we started. And maybe that's part of the reason that that's part of the hard stuff, right? Is because making those smaller changes is essentially the hard work that leads to that desired outcome, that desired transformation. I mean, getting started, that's why they call it couch to 5K, right? Like getting off the couch in the first place, starting those small habits, that is really, really hard. That's why I'm not a runner. But it's
I've started on the couch many times and made it to 5K a few times, but I always have to start over because it never lasts.
it's hard. I mean, I think those things are, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Oh, and Tanya, again, so transformation, I'm going to bring this up. Yeah. I think this is great. Transformation Transformation can get us face to face with ourselves, all our fears and demons.
Mm,
And learning to love yourself helps. I love that. Love as an emotionally mature love. When you love someone not despite of, but because of their shortcomings. And that's, there's like a whole person aspect of this that I think is important. I'm
yeah.
going to take this down again. Um, but yeah, there's a whole person aspect of that feeds into it. Like in order to do the hard stuff, there's an element of self-acceptance and self-authority that needs to go into that.
Yes. I love that, Tanya. That is so insightful and so true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It really, really is. I wonder, is that a challenge? Like, if you think of your coaching practice, Rachel, is that a challenge that often clients show up with? Like this, like a challenge around self-acceptance and then self-acceptance and self-authority leading to transformation? Like, is there a sequence that you see?
Yes, sometimes. I think one of the challenges my clients show up with is, um, yeah, I guess you could call it self-acceptance, but it's believing that something is even possible. It might be
Mm,
believing that they can change careers at that point in their lives. It might
mm-hmm,
be some deeply held thing that they want to do, a desire
mm-hmm,
to do something in particular that for whatever reason they sort of feel like isn't a thing that they can really do, maybe because of stuff somebody told them when they were a kid, or because they have some sense that it's not a real job, or
mm-hmm,
whatever the thing is, right? So
mm-hmm,
I think coming to terms with the cessation of giving yourself limits like that
mm-hmm,
you don't, it's like, the what if you didn't have those limits? What if you could do anything, right, that you wanted to? And
right.
once you get someone to think about it that way, it's like, well, I mean, then I would do this, but I can't because of all these reasons. I mean, that's
Right.
when you really get to have a good quality conversation. What about you?
Mm.
What about with your clients?
It's that's a great question because I like as I was asking you, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if I've seen a pattern in
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Because you have
and
a totally different type of practice. You're in leadership, uh,
yeah,
more of a
leader
leadership coaching practice.
it tends to be. But at the same time, what I've noticed is, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, is like all client populations have some things in common. And
Mhm,
while leadership development and and executive coaching seems to be sort of where I'm hanging my hat right now, the things that
mhm.
show up that get in the way are the same things that show up that get in the way of anyone. Um,
Yeah,
and chief among those things is that little voice in the back of your head that says, am I really even good enough for this? Is this even
yeah.
something that I should be thinking that I can do? And I say that I say this to my clients, I say this to my friends and my family too all the time. It's great that I have faith in you, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you have faith in yourself. So what is it going to take for us to get
Yes,
there? Like
yes.
what's missing? What's the story? What's like, let's get curious around that,
Yeah,
because that's where the interesting stuff happens. And that's where, self-worth and self-motivation and self-efficacy comes. And I think that it's from that space the transformation is possible. Because if I'm holding myself back, and I'm not trying to say that in a pejorative way, like, everyone does. I
no,
did it for
no.
decades. For
Yep,
decades,
yep,
I held
yep.
myself back without even knowing that that's what I was doing. And I was a high performer in those places where I was holding myself back.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's
So
normal.
many high performers do that, right? They put constraints around themselves in
Hmm.
whatever way. I mean, you think of
Exactly.
it as holding yourself back. I think of it as a ceiling, a lower
Yep.
ceiling that people put on themselves. It can be whatever metaphor you want, but I
Hmm.
think people know that they're doing it in a way. Um, but it feels necessary. It feels like they've been told so many times by that internal voice or someone else.
In my case, it kept me safe.
There you go.
That's what it was about. It was about safety, Rachel, because if I questioned myself, or if I questioned my ability, or I felt like an imposter, or I felt like I wasn't capable, then I would work harder, then I would learn
Mhm.
more, then I would, like lean on perfectionism in order to do the things that I needed to do. And the more senior I became, the less and less possible it was to experiment in in that place, because the higher
Yes.
the expectation was to get it right.
Yeah.
And the most important thing that I let go of, and that I'm still learning to let go of, is get it right. Actually, no, get it wrong. Get it wrong and learn something. Get it wrong again. Get it wrong over and over and over and over again, but get it wrong differently every time.
Well, you know, in Agile, where I spent a lot of time working in Agile, there's and in lean software development, especially, there's that phrase of fail forward and fail fast. And I think of that one to try to encourage myself and sometimes other people, because you won't learn what's wrong with it. You won't learn how to improve it unless you know, mess up, unless you make that mistake. Or some mistakes, or many mistakes.
Transformation requires discomfort. Transformation requires failure.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand. And part of it's about being okay with that. Because you can't be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's an oxymoron. But you have to be okay with it. You have to just know that it's part of life.
Yeah. You have to
part
expect
of growth.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this talk flew by. We're at the end. We're at the end. Is there anything?
Believe it. This is
I know, right? Is there anything that you've been dying to say about change and transformation that you didn't get a chance to get out?
Just that it's always happening. Change is always happening. It's constant. You can't avoid it. So you might as well make the most of it. I mean, that's what I tell myself. It's what I used to tell other people. It's, in a way, it's still what I'm telling people. So, you know, make the most of it. See what opportunities there are in it for you and for the people around you.
Yeah. Our world is in constant change, and we
Yeah.
owe it to ourselves to get curious and see what happens.
There you go.
Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having this conversation with me today.
And thank you, everyone who joined us today. I'm so excited that you were here, and let us know what you thought.
Yeah. Hey, Rachel, you're fantastic. Tell us how we can get in touch with you if we want to.
Well, you can get in touch with me on my LinkedIn profile. Just message me. I also have a website, which we can share in the comments. Do you want me to just paste it in, or do you want to send it out?
You'll need to paste it in on LinkedIn rather than on
Great. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll put my website in the comments, but also just, you know, get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I love to get messages from people, and yeah.
Sounds good. And same here. You know, y'all can reach me on LinkedIn if you like, or you can see me on my website. That's toddkarges.com. And thanks. This is it. And thank you everyone who joined us. Thank you, Tanya, for the excellent comments. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.